Well, I'm going to start with the rangefinder, I think, while I'm thinking about my next move. So I'll take this to bits. The rangefinder is quite similar to the rangefinder in the Retina 3 Big C camera. Its return spring's in a different position. I think the automatic 3 might be like that too. So, yeah, I've just been dealing with some chaos. The Microsoft Outlook, one of my customers, even though I'm not in business repairing computers anymore, one of my customers has my cell phone number and contacted me to ask about his Microsoft Outlook because apparently it wasn't showing the content of the body of the messages, only the hello Sean part, and that was as far as it got for Sean. And I advised him to run the repair tool and how to do it. I thought no more of it. And an hour later, my Outlook was doing exactly the same thing. So I had to go on the internet and discover that there's been some update and it hasn't gone well. So now, I believe another update's been put out, and I checked for updates, ran them, and my email is working correctly again, so I'm very pleased about that. And of course I had to tell my ex-customer exactly how he could do the same. And then to compound things, the lawnmower man had some important missive that he needed to tell everybody about, and so he copied the message to all of his customers. And he used the carbon copy option, not the blind carbon copy option. And of course, his idiot customers are already replying to his message, and everybody's getting the replies. And then people are puzzled about why they're getting the replies and sending more replies back. So the chaos is just beginning to get intense. I've told him the error of his ways, but it's not going to go away quickly. Right, let's get this part sorted out. First I'll remove the greasy marks from this piece because I want to clean that in the ultrasonic cleaner. And I do not want to be contaminating the water and detergent mix with anything like that. Just looking at the state of this, there's a fine mark on the mirror at the front there, like a tiny little scratch. I don't know what could have caused that. It's a bit of an odd pattern. And I'll clean this arm while I'm here. Now the front of the body here, that had some grease on it too. Yeah, it was lubricated here. I better get rid of that. That's where that spring sat. Right, and where else are we? Here I'm just getting rid of any old grease, of course, because mostly it's gone sticky. I mean, this rangefinder was sticky. It did not want to return correctly. Off to clean this back shortly. Well, I've got this back from the ultrasonic cleaner. It looks sparkly. I had to clean it twice. I cleaned it the first time and I was still left with a haze on the semi-silvered mirror. So I put it through again with a change of water and detergent, and that made all the difference in the world. It got rid of that haze, and I can only put it down to there being too much loose oil on the body of the rangefinder that had settled in the detergent solution and not rinsed away cleanly. But it's good now. So there aren't many other pieces of glass in the rangefinder to be concerned about. Here's the eyepiece lens here. I'm just cleaning that. This is the convex surface, and the convex surface goes inwards on the rangefinder. So I can, having cleaned that surface, I can drop that into place. And the flat surface is outwards here, and I can clean that in position. And put the retainer in place. This is the piece with our frame lines on it, and that can drop in there. Now that had 3 shims underneath it, which is quite generous as shims go. Let's pop that down into position. It's not wriggling down flat, I don't know why. Yeah, that's better. There's a very fine washer and the retaining screw. I'll get that started and then slide my shims in underneath. I'll have a quick look through that, see that the frame lines are visible and that there's no other fault visible. That's good. This way up. Okay. So a wipe of molybdenum paste through the centre there. Some on that surface, very lightly on that surface. Press that bush into position, and I see I did remember to mark it so that it goes back in the same position. That bush was almost certainly turned circular, but because it's got a slot in it, it effectively acts a little bit eccentric, or potentially could do. So I'll make a point of getting them back in exactly the position they came from. This is the return spring here for this arm, and that runs on the body of the rangefinder right here. So I'm just running some molybdenum paste down there. I'll hold that in position. Just make sure there's a wipe of molybdenum paste on the top where the wavy wash is going to sit. And there is the screw. You can run that down with a pair of stiff tweezers. Just checking the action of that, making sure that it moves freely. It appears to. It doesn't need to move through all that distance. It's moving through a distance something like that, and it seems to be quite good at that, so that should be fine, I think. So that's my rangefinder done. Now to get the meter in place. This is fun. To get the meter in place, ideally at least the release lever needs to be positioned in. I think possibly I'll get my springs out here. Where's the release lever gone? Where have I put it? I had it here a second ago. There it is. Alright, the release lever, wipe of molybdenum paste through the centre of that. It'll be the longer of the two springs that sits over that post. The shutter release is here. Now there's a notch in here, and that's where it runs against the post at this point. That should be correct. And my exposure meter should fit into position. It's sitting there. Yeah, I can see it'd be fun getting that front on. It's going to have to be done though. Okay, so for the exposure meter sitting there, then we've got the exposure meter cord. Well, I've left mine on the drum at the base here. And the cord has to pass up through a hole in the body. Can you see this? Yes, you just about can. It goes through here. And the cord goes, one of those goes to the back, one of those goes to the front, and I'm just going to have to check my pictures and discover which was which. I think it was probably like that. Let me go and check. Well, probably after about 40 minutes of saying rude words and starting again and finally getting the cord running in the correct directions, I have the cord all coupled back up on the meter, connected to the drum, and I believe I have that in the correct positions. Now I'm going to post some, I've got some still photos which I'll post, which show the position of the cord quite clearly, so you can see the direction that the cord runs around the drums and which piece goes on the front pulleys, which piece goes on the rear pulleys, and everything you need to know in order to get the meter correctly back on the camera. You can see I've got this set to ASA 10 here at the moment, and you can see the orientation of this meter scale relative to the camera. The details of how the cords wrap around on the drum you'll be able to see more clearly in these still photos. So at this stage that's looking pretty happy. I'm quite pleased with that. I'm going to fit the rangefinder next and close up the top of the camera, which may or may not be the best thing to do. I might just put, I've got a little blank end here which I use when I'm doing the Retina IIIS cameras. I might put that loosely on the top to stop the meter being disturbed while I get the front on the camera, and put the rangefinder on last of all perhaps. The reason I'm leery about putting the rangefinder on early is if I've got the camera top open. That's a lot of shiny mirrored glass that I could easily stick my big greasy fingers on while I'm fighting trying to get the front of the camera in place, and I'd rather not risk that, because the semi-silvered, or the front surfaced silvered mirror in particular, if you get that dirty it's exceptionally hard to get it clean again without damaging it. Virtually impossible. Right, so next up I think I will put a screw in the end of my partial housing here, which will keep the meter in place, and then I will put this aside and start working on the shutter. Well, I suppose I better see about getting into this. Let's try getting in from the back. I'm pretty sure that this is the correct way to go about doing this. There's a retainer ring around the rear group of the shutter there, but I don't think that holds all this together. This come off? Yep. Okay, so that's off. Now here, there are 4 small screws, and I'm pretty sure they hold the shutter in place. Here's our flash connection wire. I'll probably have to disconnect that now, I would think. See if I can get that loose. That's just a little clamp like used to connect on the connections for the Retina IIIS camera. And probably lift off. Okay, there's our rangefinder coupling pin. You've got to be careful not to break that. Won't be much fun finding a replacement if you break it. Now there are 4 small screws here, and I believe they hold the shutter in place on this front section. They're all very tight. Will the shutter come off now? The XM lever here is caught up. Let's see if that'll come loose. What's the secret? On my rangefinder pin is stopping me from being able to rotate this as far as I would like to. So it means I'll need to remove the lens from the front, I think, because I really need to rotate this on the housing in order to get this XM setting lever out of the way. So step back for a second while I remove the shutter from the lens from the front, and I have to remind myself how I go about doing that. This name ring may well unscrew. I'll have to test that out. Well, I think a friction tool here is actually the solution. Remove that black conical piece, and 3 screws become exposed. And I think that I should be able to unscrew that lens with a bit of effort. Let's try slackening those screws up. This is the focus adjustment, I believe. I should be able to roll this lens right out. Yeah, that's just unscrewing the whole lens now. Okay. And that's my rangefinder coupling pin. Now that's a straight pin. It looks like it's slightly relieved on the frontmost part. I probably could have pulled that out right from the back without having to fight with it. However, live and learn. Now can we get this shutter apart? What am I wanting to do? Oh, I didn't see what I did then, but something came loose. What's it catching on? Not that sharp. From memory, I've just got to rotate this out, but I think I'm being jammed by something. If I remove the rear lens group, will that make that easier? It may well do. I'll remove the rear lens group and we'll try again. I just used a friction tool there. That may give me the extra clearance I need to get this out. Yes, there we go. So it took some wriggling. Had to remove the rear lens group in order to give myself wriggle space. And I have the shutter out. The self-timer is set now, of course. And the shutter in this case is well gunked up. Right, clear the decks here slightly. I see my flash contact wire has come adrift. That has come, well, unsoldered from this point. I can put that back later. In from the front now. The depth of field pointer control, all this is in the front unit here. You can take that off as a piece. You don't need to disturb that if you're desperately keen not to disturb it. I think this centre lens group here needs to come out so I can dismantle this further. I'll just remove the lock screw and see if the collar unscrews, and will come out with that lens in place. I don't believe it will. Where's a toothpick when you need one? No, this central lens group or element here needs to come out for that to back off. So I want my lens spanner. That's very greasy. I'm going to use a spanner on this rather than the friction tool because that's as greasy as, and there's no danger that the friction tool will have any friction. Oh, let's see if this will do the job for me. That's very, very tight. I would say there's a great likelihood that that'll chew out and damage those slots. So I may go a different route. What I can do is make a tool like this, something that will engage those two slots, and then I can put in a vise and then rotate the shutter around it to loosen it off. I think that's my best bet. The feel of that as I tried to unscrew it with the tool was such that I don't believe it's likely to come out without a fight. I don't have a tool that'll engage that in the way I want to get that to turn. I have a selection of tools that I've made in the past for doing similar jobs of greater and lesser fanciness and so forth, and these have all been done in much the same way. Some of this is some stock here. This is roughly 1/8 of an inch thick, this steel stock, quite hard stuff, and you can see I've milled that down both sides to leave a tang in the middle, and I've just cut that away. So I've used these. This is a different design. That one would do a lens that was slightly larger than that. This end, the other side of it I've made to do the same job for a lens that was smaller than that. And you can also make a tool like this, which I've made at some previous occasion, and that's too wide for the job. I made this once upon a time too, when I needed to get something loose, and basically it's just a pin spanner arrangement, adjustable, but you can get an awful lot of good leverage on that to get things loose. I don't think I've got the depth there to get those pins seated in there, otherwise that would be a goer. So what I'll do is I will make something that'll do that job, probably on this pattern. This pattern's quite good. You can see it's just got a narrow slot there, piece to engage the slots. It just has to be narrow enough to fit inside this gap, and in use I just place that in the vise with just the top piece sticking up, engage the shutter on it, twist it with your hand, you'll get it loose, no problem at all, no fights, no damage to slots or anything like that. It is much more reliable when things are very tight than using a tool like this, which has just got too much give in it. There's just too much flex in a tool like this. It'll flex, it'll let go, it'll make a mess of something when you need to apply a lot of force. Much better to use something that's not going to move, that's going to stay there. It's got plenty of strength and will do the job. So I'm down to the shed to machine something up, and I'm just looking to see if I can utilise one of these tools. Possibly my answer here is just to take the end of this, because I've got the width. This is quite a width. That's wide enough to engage those slots. So if I machine off the edge of that to give it an edge like this, and stick this in the vise, it'll probably do it. It would be better if it was slightly wider so that there was no danger of it slipping sideways out of the slot, but it's pretty close, so I don't think I'll have any problems. So, me off with some engineering, and you can go back to having a cup of coffee. In the interests of making the engineering something simple that most people can achieve without too much in the way of equipment, what I have here is a table knife. Butter knife, nothing too fancy. Good strong steel. I'm just going to cut a piece off wide enough to fit down into that gap, and the width of the blade looks like it's just right to fit into those slots and engage them, and I'll use that. I'll just cut a piece of that, stick that down in the vise and use that. Now this is good. You could probably cut that with a hacksaw. I'm going to use an angle grinder. But it wouldn't be hard regardless. You'd be able to cut that one way or the other with minimal tools. And what do I want for length? 28mm would be ideal.